Hello and welcome to Tools in the Shed, a podcast powered by CarsGuide, ready to rip into car stuff that's caught our eye this week. I'm James, and with me is Chesto.
Hello all.
And Steve.
Welcome to my shed.
This week, teasing turns to confirmation that Toyota's serious about a hot hatch Corolla, and I've got to say it's about time. We'll also talk through some highlights from the CarsGuide garage this week. And we'll catch up with California's most law-abiding citizen in this week's MuskWatch. So stay with us. But first of all, some feedback. Now, last week we were talking about what looks to be Ford's baby ute, a sub-Ranger and possibly focus-based ute that's going to be called, we think, Maverick. So we had some feedback on that. First of all, from Matt Murdoch, and I've got to say that Matt's name, he sounds like a 70s TV detective. Matt Murdoch is absolutely fantastic.
He was in the A-team, wasn't he? Wasn't he in the A-team?
There was a Murdoch.
He was in the A-team, yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe we're dealing with an A-team member. Doesn't think the Focus Ute would work here, mainly because the Hilux and the Ranger, he believes, are so much about the image. It's really not what's underneath them. He says, you know, you could have the same suspension setup as Fred Flintstone's car and people would still buy it. The only off-roading they see is when it's on the verge near the shops.
Correct.
That the Focus would, he believes, be a much better ute, but buyers won't care. And I suppose he's really opening up that conversation about you are what you drive, that it's an image thing, it's an emotional choice, that are these vehicles really being used to their best potential or just bought for the image that they kind of apply to you as an individual?
Absolutely, JC. The Raptor's a prime example of that, isn't it? How many people are really putting that thing through its paces off-road?
Sure.
I mean, that's like virtually a roadworthy Baja truck. You can't tell me the people driving through the city are doing that on the weekend, surely.
Yeah. But as I've said before, whenever you see someone that has to just go up the gutter or, you know, back the trailer, and you can just see the cogs in their mind going, oh, thank God I've got the four-wheel drive. This is exactly why I needed the four-wheel drive. And they're just justifying their purchase.
Or when there's a half inch of standing water on the road, they go, whew, good thing we got the four-wheel drive.
I'm ready.
I've got this ground clearance, you know. So, yeah, sorry.
Everyone loves the way the Ranger looks. But some people are intimidated by the size. Like they really want one, but it's just a bit too big for their suburb or their, you know. But if you got a smaller one, they'd be mad for it. And if you call it Maverick, you just need to get Tom Cruise on board. Line up the launch of the new Top Gun movie.
Well, like I said last week, we should call it Goose. You know, there should be another partner to it that's called Goose. Now, but James Gowing chimed in and said, my father had a 60s Toyota Crown Ute. It didn't have four-wheel drive, but drove everywhere on our farm. So he says, you know, would a Ford Maverick Ute need to be four-wheel drive? Just comes down to the gearing in his view. So there's someone who's used an old-school rear-wheel drive Ute without needing the four-wheel drive at all.
And for the record, every time I've taken a car across a paddock, rear-wheel drive is more fun.
Definitely more fun.
But I was going to say also, I remember a 1960s Toyota Classic called the Stout. They had a ute called the Toyota Stout. And a friend of mine's father had one, and it looked just that. It looked tough, you know, built professional grade kind of little ute. And Australia's got a bit of a history with small utes, the Subaru Brumby and the Proton Jumbuck. Are big favourites, and they've still got a devoted following.
Trivia question for you two and the audience.
The Mighty Boy.
Mighty Boy.
When the Toyota Stout was launched in 1954, when did it cease production?
Wow. I'm going to say 74.
74, Stephen?
Yeah.
63.
That was my initial thought too. 1989, if you can believe it.
Whoa!
Power through all the way to the almost 1990s.
But
there you go.
It'd have to be different iterations, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Pardon that?
But when you picture it Stout, I imagine a car that's like 8 feet wide and 3 feet tall. Like, just such a great, such a descriptive name.
But Steve, you mentioned the Mighty Boy when Suzuki in New Zealand was mucking around with the Jimny and putting a tray back on it. Of course, one of our listeners thought it should be the Mighty Bro. That was an absolute walk-up start.
Absolutely.
Your room, one jandle in the back, one jandle and a chili bun.
One jandle and a chili bun. That'd be fantastic, cuz, eh? Anyway, David, now cars in the garage last week, one of them was the Toyota Grand Via. So David Burt said, "What's the point of the Toyota Granvia, I hear you ask? Once I saw the interior shots of the rear seating, I finally got it. It's a mobile home theatre. And it does have that look with the captain-style chairs, very plush, all of that stuff." Bartones 123 came back and said, "I'd take the seats out, put them in the theatre room in the house, and use the van to transport white goods and FedEx parcels, or alternatively, if you're feeling really JDM, just fill the van area with one massive subwoofer big enough to literally melt your buttons."
Base that melts the tarmac. Yeah, absolutely. Mate, I got to say on that Granvia, I know it's not a like-for-like replacement for the Tarago, which I also appreciate has something of a cult following. But, geez, the Tarago towards the end of its days was a hateful thing. It felt old and ordinary. So anything that's not that is a step in the right direction.
And I think any Toyota dealer brave enough to order one into stock would have had it on their hands for some time.
Yeah.
It was not a hot item towards the end of its life.
Towards the end, no, it was not.
But the Granvia
the Granvia is actually the car that my daughter wants most. Like she's begging for a Rolls Royce or anything screen, but every time she sees that car, she says, "Please, can we get one of those?" It's a favorite thing. I reckon it's because it looks like a home cinema on wheels.
Well, Richard was talking about driving it last week, and he said his little boy wanted to go into the way back seat right up the end. And much to Richard's surprise, he was stopped at the lights, and his little boy was just next to him, like, "G'day, Dad." He'd unbuckled himself and just walked down the vehicle.
Yeah,
so there are risks
when you can
involved.
walk through a vehicle, it's good. Yeah.
There are risks
the Model
involved.
X's like that, Dave. The Model X's are great. They love the Model X too because they can get in and just walk around. You know, the doors open up and you can just walk between the seats. It feels like flying business class.
There is something very nice about that. Now, David Burt, who is a regular multiple commenter, has actually labelled himself this time and said, "Second comment, exclamation point." The Lexus LX, he's saying it might be expensive, but the pricing of the Lexus just highlights how dear the Land Cruiser 200 series is, because this price spread of the Land Cruiser 200 is about 78 up to about 130. And he believes that the diesel version of the LX, which is what Crafty was in last week, he was in the 570, the petrol, but David Burt thinks the LX 450 with low kilometres could be your brilliant round Australia kind of wagon, because in that car, you're only a fraction above the top end of the Land Cruiser.
Absolutely. But, mate, I know we had this conversation this morning, JC, but for me, that just shines a light on how expensive that 200 series is. The fact that you can pay $130,000 for a car that old is... I mean, I know things are worth what people will pay for them, but, gee, that seems like highway robbery.
Well, I mean, David Burt's saying you get your flash interior, you get all of the creature comforts in the Lexus. It's essentially just as capable underneath the skin. Yep. So why not? I think it's a really interesting point.
Absolutely. And if you're not going to bash the panels, why not? It's perfect.
Yeah, that's right. We'll hammer...
touches on a news story, James. Touches on a news story that I've just written for CarsGuide about the one-off tax write-off for your business, which is now up to $150,000 per car. And I spoke to this accountant who said there's a limit on cars, which is $57,000. He said that's supposed to be the price of an expensive car. He said, but they set that when utes and stuff were not flash vehicles. He said now you can buy a commercial vehicle. You can buy a ute up to $150,000. And he said basically the way that those cars exist has beaten the tax loophole and driven right around. So you can get a really expensive commercial vehicle as a truck, but you can only get a $57,000 car.
Yeah,
that's interesting, isn't it? Yes.
That story. It's amazing.
Those tax guidelines need to catch up with modern reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You've only got back to $1,000 and shop now.
Okay. Yes, shop now. Okay. Well, Hammer Rock said you can tell even Lexus doesn't see LX model owners taking them off the road. The front bumper design, the LX alone, is enough to convince you of that. How quickly will its bumper see damage compared to the 200 series? So, look, if David Burt does buy his Lexus, he'd have to modify the front bumper because it's not exactly tailored for off-road.
But also worth remembering, Jake. Oh, sorry. Also worth remembering that there's off-road and then there's off-road, if you know what I mean. I actually think that the Lexus would handle almost anything you wanted to do with it, unless you wanted to be really properly off-road. In which case,
I'd like to see someone rock hopping a Lexus LX.
Yeah, that's right.
Would be fantastic.
Off-road means the car park at Thredbo.
Yeah, correct.
That's true. No, off-road means the grass verge on the median when you're in a traffic jam and you have to turn around and come back the other way. So,
that's right.
Oh, thank God I've got this four-wheel drive. I always knew that this was a canny decision because we need the four-wheel drive.
The extra 40,000 I paid is worth every cent.
Worth it, just for that moment.
Every cent.
Wax333 says, any ideas why we don't get the Lexus Prado-based GX 460 spec? Now, it is based on the Prado. It's sold mainly in the US market. And I got in touch with Lexus, and they reckon that all the bases for large SUVs are covered by RX and LX. They don't need another model in there. They've got different engine configurations in petrol and diesel, so it's added complexity that they don't want at this point in time. So
I'd agree with that.
That's their point of view.
Plus, I suspect they're not selling the existing models hand over fist anyway, JC. So why rush another one in?
Yep, good point. Now, under the heading of just general feedback, Lennon Fuller says hi. That's it.
Great.
Thanks.
Hello.
Thanks very much, Lennon.
Hi.
Now, Logan came at us a couple of times saying on both occasions, "want to be friends." So I think that "want to be friends" was probably uttered with a Russian accent, and that was probably not a person. But in case Logan is a person, sure, we'll be friends at some stage. But I'm not going to respond directly to that.
Was there a picture of him with a tiger?
TGV gave us the tick of approval. He said, all good show. So he's given us a hygiene check on last week's show. Thank you very much.
Great.
Millen Rogers follows that by saying, great job as usual. Thank you. I've enjoyed your podcast so much that 3 weeks ago, I rewatched all your podcasts from the first one about the ugliest Aussie cars to this one now. It's a 40-minute drive from work. So thanks for keeping me company for those 3 weeks. Like, this is podcast 133. So he's gone through quite a few to get to that point. Also, he says the AU, this is controversial, the AU is one of the best looking Falcons, especially the XR and Tickford models. In my opinion, the only ugly AU was the Series 1 Forte with that whale looking grille. I know I'm 2 years late, but thought I'd let you know my opinion out there. Now, I noticed that his picture on YouTube is actually an XR badge from the AU era.
Okay.
So it may just be that Millen is an owner of one of those vehicles. You never know.
Yeah, I suspect that might be the case.
That's a person who, given a range of human emotions, would choose a frown over a smile.
Wow.
That's what they looks like, just a sad clown. Just a sad clown face.
Well, I think, talking about that grille, I think at the time, there was the one ton or the flatbed 1 tonner version of AU had a particular grille in it, and people were buying that grille to put it into their sedan because that particular grille was so disliked.
Yeah.
Listeners and viewers can probably correct me, but finally we had Pranav Shroti come at us saying, interested in knowing, apart from cars, what are your other interests? I've not seen any bike content on this channel. And I know both of you guys are keen motorcycle riders. So fill Pranav in. Steve, you've got an extensive history with motorcycles.
Well, I only write about cars because I started writing about motorbikes. And when I was riding motorbikes, the motoring editor asked me to review a car, and I said, "Go to hell, you tin top soft cock wanker, etc., etc." I was against cars. I thought anyone who drove cars was trying to kill me. So yes, I'm very much so. The only reason I don't ride bikes much still is that I know that I would kill myself because your skills are not the same as they are. And it is a miracle, frankly, that I'm still alive. After road testing motorbikes is not a sane way to make a living.
And in Canberra, no less, Stephen, in winter, which does require a particularly hairy test. Yeah.
That's how much I wanted to do it.
You're currently a motorcycle owner, aren't you?
I just actually sold it, but I did dabble in motorbikes for a little while, and then once the demerit points started flying off my license, I quickly realised I should swap back to cars. So it was a brief dalliance.
And I should point out, James, that was on a postie bike that you managed to
lose. Yeah, that's right. You really
I see, Steve, I absolutely take your point. I see motorbikes as a bit like hard drugs in that they are, I'm sure, very, very pleasurable, but they'll also empty your wallet, kill you, break up your relationships, do all kinds of nasty things to you. So I've gone cold turkey. That having ridden bikes at various times, I've said I don't want to go there because I know what the end game will be.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why I've always said that motorbikes for me are like heroin. I am and always will be a motorbike addict, but cars
You
are
are.
my methadone program. So it's like, as long as I can
Very
go
good.
fast, really fast in a car, like an 11 out of 10 car is at least a 4 out of 10 motorbike experience. So I'm
Motorbike,
happy. I
yeah.
can almost get there.
Fair
The
call.
bike I
Fair
want.
call.
Yeah.
Now we'll move now to our main topic of discussion, which is it's been a rolling story for us at CarsGuide, hasn't it, Chesto? And
It
you've
has.
been the author. You've been the author of much of this, which is Toyota applying its Gazoo racing formula. They've already come clean with the Yaris, and you've driven that car. But next logical step would be the Corolla, and you've had some hints that it's been more or less confirmed, yeah?
Yeah, look, it has been at last. So it was basically one of the industry's most poorly kept secrets. We knew that once they put all that development funding into the Yaris GR, it wasn't just going to live in that vehicle. It would be, what a terrible waste of money without sharing it across the rest of the range. So then we started getting whispers and rumors that a Corolla GR was in the offing, or GR Corolla, I should say, was in the offing. Then Toyota in Australia registered the Corolla GR nameplate or trademarked it with the trademark office here in Australia. So that was another indication it was coming, but nothing from Toyota. Toyota wouldn't seal the deal for us until last weekend, when Toyota in America, via their Twitter account, sent out a very sort of cryptic tweet saying that while the GR Yaris isn't going to come to America, perhaps it is time the US got a hot hatch of its own, a hot hatch to call its own, the tweet read. A hot hatch that continues to push the boundaries of performance, and one that can only come from Toyota Gazoo Racing. Are you with us? The tweet asked. Now, given that the Toyota hatch lineup isn't particularly extensive, it doesn't take too much detective work to figure out that they were talking about the Corolla, GR Corolla, which then acts as this kind of accidental confirmation for this vehicle. And when you piece that bit of the puzzle with everything else we already know, this thing's 100% lock. It'll be expected to appear around 2021, 2022.
Right.
Actually, 2022, 2023, I should say. Now, because of what we learned on the Yaris GR launch, and that is that the chief engineer there, and I'm going to get this name wrong, so please forgive me, Naohiko Saito, told us that...
Chesto, that's totally wrong.
Thank you. and
you forgot the San. Where was the San? Where's the respect?
Oh, yes.
No, I think it's only San if you don't use the full name, isn't it? It becomes Naohiko-san, doesn't it? Anyway, let's not get bogged down on the detail.
Kill Bill San.
So anyway, and I'm quoting here. He said, "It is wasting time to use a four-wheel drive system and this 1.6 litre engine for one car. I'd like to use this powertrain for each of the other GR models." So what he's basically saying there is that we know what's going to power the Corolla GR. It's the same powertrain as the Yaris GR. And that's good news, because it's a pretty punchy little engine, 200 kilowatts, 370 newton meters, a four-wheel drive system adapted from the RAV4, Toyota's TNGA platform, a manual gearbox. I mean, God, it's ticking some hot hatch boxes, isn't it?
It is, and we're talking 3 cylinders, aren't we? Did you already mention that? Sorry,
same engine.
It's
1.6
3-cylinder.
turbocharged 3-cylinder, which will, I'm telling you, when you drive this Yaris, it will
bet your ass.
You'll bet your ass that it will redefine the way you look at 3-cylinder engines. Honestly, it is ridiculously powerful. It's amazing.
Unreal.
So
Very
there you
good.
go. Corolla GR is coming.
And so that was America, but you'd have to presume that we'd be looking down the barrel of getting that car as well, yeah?
Let me shift focus to Australia for a second. So, yes, we know that they have already trademarked the badge GR Corolla in Australia. They're being a bit cagey about it, but they're going on the record to say, and I'm quoting again here, "We have always said that if international GR product were to become available, we would have our hand up for it." So they want it. They've trademarked it. We know we're getting the GR Yaris. So watch this space. It's a lot. Not only is it coming, but it's a lock for Australia. And frankly, I think that's a really, really good thing. Toyota is
fantastic.
Back on the kind of
I reckon it's exciting
performance train.
I was behind a Corolla ZR in traffic, a rare sighting, because really that's near the top of the tree for the Corolla, and it looked great. I can only imagine with a slightly tougher exterior and all of the horsepower lurking under the bonnet. Yeah, it'll be something special.
Mate, I reckon it looks awesome, the Corolla. The only downside to it is it's a lack of practicality, I suppose. But in terms of
boot,
in terms of style and driving, I think it's an absolute winner. And look, the sales prove it, don't they?
Well, look, in terms of style and driving, I think we'll move on to some cars that have been residing in our garage. And Steve, we'll kick it off with you, because you've been in something it's almost a novel to get through this car's name. Tell us what you've been in.
Well, usually I'm in something very entry level. It's a
The man of the people.
Porsche Cayenne Turbo SE Hybrid, which is
Right.
It's this bizarre idea of getting a green glow out of something expensive that burns lots of fuel. And literally, when you open the door, it has these little green Cayenne stills that give a green glow. It's
Nice.
like a Hulk car. So that's nice.
Yes.
It's got a 404 kilowatt 4-litre twin turbo V8, which is obviously very green friendly, and an extra electric motor. This electric motor that gives you the extra 100 kilowatts, which literally lasted, I think, about 20 minutes. And then it said electric power no longer available. Every time I start the car, it says electric power no longer available. It refuses to run in silent mode. It's now basically just a very noisy V8 Cayenne with some badges.
So no plug-in. It's just
there's a plug in the boot. I just refuse to plug it. It just seems so pointless.
Okay.
Do I want extra? Do I want to drive such a lovely car silently? I mean, it's there. I used it as a skipping rope this morning.
But you can't complain about the batteries running down and then say
if you don't charge it up.
Well, I'm not going to charge it. Who would charge it?
This car's always running out of fuel. When did you last fill it up? 1982.
I've got to say, Steve, I don't know about you, but when Porsche lobbed the Cayenne on an unsuspecting world, way back when, it didn't feel as though they really knew what they were doing with that format of car because it was so dramatically different. But I've got to say, by the time you get to the current generation in that coupe body, it feels like a Porsche. It's as if they've got the head around, this is what we're doing now, and it feels like a proper sporty car.
Mm-hmm. And they managed to slice the ugly off it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that coupe shape, they finally looked at it and go, it doesn't have to be ugly. And they said at the launch of the last one, we looked at it again. Why don't we do that?
I love that implies that when they were designing the first one, they went, look, I'm sorry, guys, it has to be ugly.
It's going to be ugly. It's got to be ugly.
Can you imagine telling the Porsche designers you have to make an SUV? They've been working on beautiful cars their whole lives. I had to make an SUV. Well, screw you.
Right.
I had to make it so ugly.
But I forget the guy's name now, who was the CEO of Porsche at the time the Panamera was in development. And he said, it has to be able to accommodate me. And he was a very tall guy. And hence they had this tremendously awkward rear end on the back of the Panamera because they had to make it big enough to accommodate this particular person.
Mate,
all I was going to say was when he departed the scene, the Panamera became much more attractive.
Yeah, it would have saved them a fortune in engineering costs just to sack that guy.
Yeah, that's right. Just weigh it up. What's his salary? What's the development cost?
Yeah, that's right. But the Porsche do have a habit of making cars ugly to begin with. The Panamera is a prime example of it. It's still not a total charmer, but it's certainly less offensive than it was when it first launched.
I think in similar fashion to the Cayenne, Porsche gradually got its head around, as you say, Chesto, got to grips with it, and driving the Panamera now, it feels like a Porsche.
Yeah,
and it also looks more. You can see that 911-ness coming through more strongly in the design of the car.
Absolutely.
They just have their way with it over time. It's okay. You've got to make this now. Oh, okay. And it feels like they do it grudgingly. And then once it's actually installed, they have their wicked way with it, and it becomes a Porsche.
Yep. Although the one exception to that rule, I think. Sorry, the one exception to that rule, I think, is the. I drove the Taycan last year. That is a winner straight out of the gate. It is such an impressive thing.
It's a sports car. So the people at Porsche want to work on that. I reckon they put them in a room and they have to draw ping pong balls out of the thing and says, you got the SUV.
You got to do an SUV.
Yeah, you're over there. But if you get the sports car thing, you're like,
yes, got it.
All right.
And a Taycan would be like that'd be almost the most exciting thing to work on.
Yeah, try and make it Porsche. Yeah. That's right.
It's not a sports car, Chesto, but you've been in a car with a particular purpose and another lengthy name. Give us the rundown on this vehicle's name.
So I am in the Nissan Pathfinder N-Trek Special Edition, which is kind of the styling package that Nissan's applying to a whole bunch of their vehicles at the moment. So they started working on it, I think, about the same time as the Warrior, really. But while the Warrior is a genuine engineering change, this is more of a style pack.
So as Crafty calls it, the Warrior.
The Warrior, yeah.
Yeah.
So
the Warrior.
This is the Pathfinder we know. It's been around for a while now. We you kind of know and love it already. It has always been big 7-seat car. It's always been a kind of I guess a Labrador in a kind of way. It's a bit big, a bit dopey, but kind of lovable as well. N-Trek adds 18-inch alloy wheels, all sorts of black styling on the outer body, just makes the whole thing look a little bit cooler. 3.5 litre V6 engine, 202 kilowatts, 340 newton meters. It's a tried and tested engine. It does the job. Less successful, I think, is the fact that it's partnered with the CVT gearbox, which is a bit really frustrating with an engine that size too, because it just always feels like it's groaning through the power.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
But there was reports this week that actually the 2021 Pathfinder, which is basically a tickled version of the one we got now, swaps the CVT for a new slick 9-speed automatic, which is used in the Frontier in the States. So that'll transform the way that car drives. But look, it's a familiar favourite. It's huge, plenty of space, 7 seats in the back. And quite frankly, with a price point that starts at about 46 grand, it's not bad value for money either, really.
Right.
For a
and
car
sorry,
that size.
Chesto, just remind me, what's the engine in that car? You probably mentioned it. I'm sorry.
In the car I've got is a 3.5 litre V6, so 202 kilowatts, 340 newton meters.
It's a petrol engine.
Petrol engine, sorry. Yes.
Petrol engine. Okay. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, because I was going to say if it was a CVT, it'd be so unusual to have it together with a diesel, but to have a CVT in a vehicle of that scale is unusual anyway.
Yeah. Well, and it is
a bad idea.
And you notice it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've been in a pretty low-key car this week. It's the Maserati Levante Trofeo Launch Edition. It's, just a tick under 400 grand before you put it on the road, and 3.8 litre twin-turbo V8. Steve, I see your 400 plus kilowatts and raise you to 440, which is just a touch under 600 horsepower. 8-speed auto, 730 newton meters, available from just 2,400 RPM. So this thing is ferocious and sounds it. It really gets up and goes hard. And driving it is a bit like seeing Chris Hemsworth in his Speedos, Rita Ora in a bikini walking arm in arm down the street. People just sort of stop whatever they're doing and look, because this one was in Giallo Modenese, which is a multi-layer paint treatment in a kind of vibrating yellow. So not only was the car loud audibly, it was loud visually as well. But I got to say, for any Italian car, and this is a Maserati, obviously you're up in the top end, the quality of the thing is amazing. The interior is just a work of art. The leather, it's called Pieno Fiore leather. It's soft, beautifully treated.
Super
the
fine.
cross-stitching, the quilting, the yellow kind of stitching to pick that out. Absolutely beautiful. You would swear it was top end German, in the way it has been done. Big 22-inch rims, things like a 17-speaker, 1,280 watt Bowers & Wilkins stereo. You could basically have the glass vibrating if you chose to. It's all-wheel drive and it'll go 0 to 100 in under 4 seconds. So it's just an extraordinary vehicle.
What's the sticker price, JC?
Yeah, just under 400 grand before you put it on the road.
Jeebus. Okay.
Wow, 100 grand per second to 100 kilometers an hour. That's fantastic.
It is, and
those seats are so lovely. You just want to rub your cheeks against them rather than drive it. Like, it's just so
the
soft.
whole interior. If you want to impress your friends, all you've got to do is open the door to that car. It is absolutely beautiful, magnificent, and you've got a little glass roof in the top. Not little, actually, quite sizable. And once you open that up and let the light in, it's just so special.
Would that be the most powerful Maserati they've got then at the moment, JC? I think the Trofeo?
And look, when you open up the bonnet, talk about impressing your friends. When you're down at the country club, ready to play a round of golf or whatever you do when you own one of these cars, cracking the bonnet open, it's beautifully red, like a red crackle finish on the actual hard parts of the engine, with a magnificent carbon fibre cover over the top of the plenums on the top of the engine. The little V8 badge, you knew it, and the Maserati Trident and all of that. The styling of the engine bay is quite special as well. So it's quite a car. Look, it's not my cup of tea for various reasons. I don't have the money, quite obviously. But for those that are into that kind of very high profile, very fast 5-seat SUV, it's pretty special.
Now, and it must sound the business too. But one thing about Maseratis is even when they're not as engineeringly sharp as some super Italians, they always sound the absolute business.
Well, you've got your sport setting and then you've got your Corsa setting. Now, I didn't spend much time in Corsa because it does tend to soften off the traction control and those kinds of things. And I don't want to go there on the road, really. If you're going to pound your Levante around the circuit, do it there. But it does deepen the voice of the engine. And even though there are 2 turbos there, they've managed to get enough exhaust past those and to make this barking, bellowing sound. It's really quite amazing. Yeah.
Now, can I ask you
it's
question, JC? Sorry, Stephen, you go first because I'm going off Trofeo.
I was going to say, it's not a competition, but you have inspired me to go out and plug my car in because once I plug it in, I'll have 504 kilowatts and 70 newton meters, and I will beat your ass.
All right, well, I'll go and acquire an electric motor. I'll get an electric motor, put it in the Maserati, hook it all up, and I'll go, 550 plus.
I love that. That's Porsche's motivation for plugging it in. If you want more power, plug it in. So, Jason, what are we looking at behind you?
This one, that's the 6th member of my family. That's a 1969 Merc 280 SE Coupe. That I've had for the last 20 odd years. So I'm in my shed. Mel inspired me to occupy the shed. He's got room for about 10 cars.
Yes,
in
he
his.
certainly does.
But we've just got the family structure in that one. But thank you for asking.
But
I only have photos of cars. All I have is photos. I don't have actual cars.
It's a nice car though. It's a nice photo, Steve.
Nice car.
But speaking of nice cars, it's time for MuskWatch.
MuskWatch.
Right, so it's been a big week for the dear leader. He has basically defied guidelines near San Francisco in California. And Clean Technica, which is typically a site that's pretty pro Tesla and Elon Musk, has published an opinion piece by a guy called Steve Henley, Random Thoughts on Elon Musk, the Fremont Factory, Liberty, and the Coronavirus. And he starts it off in a fairly provocative way by saying, for years I've had a sneaking suspicion that Elon Musk is an arrogant ass. So I thought that was he's setting the scene, as it were. He runs through things like calling autopilot, and how reckless that might be. That it doesn't have the things that people may believe it has. Tweeting about the company's stock price, telling officials of Alameda County to take their public health directives and shove them is not the act of a wise man.
No.
And he says, nor is threatening to move the company to another state. Both come across as the actions of a self-important, his words, not mine, jerk. So in March, when the Alameda County in California, that's where Tesla headquarters is, and they told everyone to shut their businesses down, Tesla stayed open and, in fact, delayed its shutdown for more than a week. Just, come and get me. We're going to keep building these cars. And Musk has forced his factory to reopen against those same stay-at-home orders. And he's calling it government overreach. He's come out with all of this freedom. I want the freedom to do what I want to do. He's come over all Trumpy about it. And all the other auto companies over in Michigan, they've been able to open up. So he's saying this is really, to quote him, messed up. But several Tesla employees that the New York Times spoke to said that they were clearly of the view that he was putting profits before people.
100%.
That the culture inside the business, it felt like that's what he was doing.
To me, it feels like he's just gone, JC, from being that kind of revolutionary, change the world, save the planet, who just happens to make a lot of money, to just being another Mr. Burns style business leader.
Dude who makes a lot of money.
Open
exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
and he's one of the many people pushing the American government to pass a law that will make it illegal for you to force your employees to go back to work, and you can't be sued if they get coronavirus. They said they won't pay any more money out, no more JobKeeper style money, unless they exempt all employers. And Trump, Musk could be one of those.
We were talking about it a little bit last week in that it's our American viewers and listeners, it'd be great to get their feedback, but it seems like a cultural difference and a fundamental one where in times like this, the hot focus on the Constitution and what that enables people to do, and also dollars and cents and what that causes people to do in the search for wealth and growth and all of those things, it can put people's well-being in danger.
Absolutely.
So it hasn't served America very well to this point through this whole coronavirus thing.
Absolutely.
And there's a thing called optimism bias, apparently, which Americans suffer from optimism bias. And you think about it, it makes sense. They're just generally more optimistic that we'll go back to work, everything will be fine. Whereas in Australia, we go, well, we know that's not fine. I think we'd rather not. You know?
Well, on Twitter, a guy called Charles T. Barreca said to Elon, "You're a big hit, supervillain status, congratulations." And the meme cartoon is of a huge robotic Musk. Looks a bit like the Tin Man out of, what do I want to say, Dorothy going back to Kansas. Wizard of Oz, thank you. Pointing to the Tesla plant with workers saying, "Back to work, meat organisms." So, I mean, he is trying to connect computers to people's brains, all of that kind of stuff. It's bizarre. But to your point, Chesto, CNN Business has run an analysis piece that said, what happened to Elon Musk? And it's a trio of 3 writers at CNN that have said he's changed from, he came into public consciousness about a decade ago. And he was this quirky upstart, putting batteries in a Lotus and just doing bizarre things. He definitely played the part of the new kind of CEO. I'm on Twitter and, I'm young and been happening and I've done this thing at PayPal and I'm a Tech Valley kind of person rather than a car guy. Engaged with fans, sought to redefine what fun in a car is through all of the tech and whatever that's in it. And he grew Tesla into this, enormous entity. But he's become increasingly, just as you say, like Monty Burns, just sitting in his tower, wanting profits over people. And what they're saying is that with soaring unemployment, workers don't have much of a choice. That's to your point, Steve, that people can be boxed into a corner where they have to make a decision about whether they have food on the table or whether they put themselves in serious risk of ill health.
It's terrifying.
And he seems to I'm increasingly convinced that cartoon of yours is bang on. If you listen to, I can't recommend highly enough listening to Elon Musk on that Joe Rogan podcast. And he's incredibly intelligent and he has ideas about everything and so on, but he's also a robot. Like there's just no emotion in his answers. So he can talk about things that would terrify you and things he's scared of, and he just expresses no emotion. He's just very flat, very calm, and I don't think he sleeps. I don't think he eats.
His face is like a mask.
Actually,
anyway, he doesn't have a lot of facial expression.
He's like Michael Schumacher, but even more frightening.
More dangerous.
To try, I think, in an attempt to try and lighten the mood, he tweeted out a picture. He tweeted out a picture saying, "Ice cream sundae in a martini glass," and then underneath, "Life should be lived." Right. So that's part of his political and social philosophy. So I first thought, right, so that's living, is it? That's your idea of living a good life, is to chow into this horrendous-looking ice cream thing in a martini glass. But then it turned out pretty rapidly that he'd nicked the photo and used it without credit, which is he's a serial offender on this.
Yeah.
I think he sees the internet as just this public domain where everything is available to everyone, and that's another philosophy he seems to have. But the final straw...
it belongs to him.
Yeah, probably. It will. In a sense, it will when he rings the globe with little satellites to bring internet to all. He probably will. The final straw on Twitter said, image was taken in Santa Monica in 2017 by Episodic Eater. And it had been shared with an Italian restaurant chain in the US called Buca di Beppo that same year. So, as usual... that's what the final straw says. As usual, Elon Musk's version of living life is to steal it from others. So he's nicked all kinds of stuff without crediting the creator or the author. Turns out it's a food blogger called The Episodic Eater, and her name's Diane. And so on Twitter, she showed the raw image without any watermark. So it's my picture, and everybody knew that it was. And Isaac Newton, nice Twitter handle there, said, good engineers use aluminium, great engineers steal. So that pun pretty much sums up, I think, Elon's approach to what's going on. But we were talking earlier about the share price off air, I think. So it's at $803, a fraction over $803, and it was $780 last week. So in a week, it's put on another $20.
Yeah.
But I think, Steve, this is something you're referencing. Barron's, a finance-focused site in the US, has said Tesla won the battle to reopen its Fremont factory because they did. The Alameda County came around. They reached a point of settlement, and the factory is open, of course. But why it could still lose the war. And that is because, he won the battle, but reopening could expose him to liability from potentially adverse health outcomes. That he might get the sausage machine working again and cars are coming out the other end. But if people get sick, that could be a bigger cost for him altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he threatened to move it, didn't he, JC, to Texas or something?
To Texas.
He's trying to move the whole business.
Yeah.
If you look at his Twitter feed, all kinds of states in the US were saying, come and visit us. Come over here. We'll make it worth your while. Really,
we'll
kill
your workforce. Come to us.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't mind. We never shut down in the first place.
Now, can I ask one quick question before we move on? Because I'm fascinated by the share price. So it was last week, JC. You probably talked about this in the last pod, where he tweeted that it's overvalued. The share price is too high, causing a sort of mini plummet. So has the $20 increase put it back above where it was before he said that tweet?
Sure.
It has?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Goodness,
so part of the rationale allegedly was he wanted the share price to drop so that he could acquire more shares himself. And then hopefully, the price comes back up. That's pure scuttlebutt. That's nothing that he's ever said. But that would be one rationale for why you would want to tweet that.
Fair enough. But it is just unkillable, the share price,
illegal.
Yeah, well, that's right. It is. And it's manipulation. And he'd made all of these commitments to the SEC that there would be an independent legal oversight on any tweet that may impact the share price. And when he made that tweet, Chesto, he was asked flat out, I think it was by the Washington Post, did you have that tweet vetted? And were you serious when you made that tweet? He was serious, but he didn't have it vetted. He said no on Twitter. He's potentially in hot water there again.
But he has to be, otherwise it just shows the SEC to be toothless. Yeah.
Who says my shares are overvalued? There's only one reason to do that, to drive the price down so you can buy more.
Exactly.
Why else would you do it?
Exactly.
Gracious,
but I think, again, and very wealthy people in the US seem to have a lot of leeway. They're given a lot of breathing room, latitude to do things that in other countries, I reckon, would be slammed immediately.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
There's just something about money and large amounts of it that lets you get away with blue murder.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. But with that,
when you said James, when you said that Elon Musk lightened the mood, I thought you were going to say he lightened the mood by calling his kid that thing, which I heard this week is actually. I know how to pronounce it. You've seen it written down. It's actually pronounced password.
Oh, is it?
Strong password.
Well, you're kidding. Anyway, I think it's illegal in California law.
I think that's the world's worst gag, JC. Don't take that too seriously.
No, look, I'm concentrating on wrapping up the podcast, and Steve's putting in bad jokes. I think we have indeed reached the finish line. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Chester.
Thank you, everybody.
And thanks to our engineer-in-chief, wizard, and part-time mall Santa, Mr. Pritchard, for his ongoing ability to turn trash into podcast treasure. Today, he's in his Golden Arches French fries T-shirt, fully fat dance pants, and furry neon green platform boots that turn purple under black light in the club.
Nice.
What a story. What a story. Please pass on the word about the podcast and let us know your thoughts by searching for CarsGuide on Facebook and Instagram using the hashtag CGPodcast, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. If you're an iTunes listener, please rate and review us. And remember, you can watch us on YouTube. But before we go, fueled up this week, went in to pay, standing near the cash point, and there was a cross on the floor telling me where I should stand. But I've watched enough Roadrunner cartoons to know that is a bad idea.
I like that one, JC. I'm on board that one.
Bad.
Good idea.
Gold.